Mrs. Ralston. Try and think. Think!
No, I can't think. My head is numb.
Mrs. Boyle had only just been killed when you got to her. You came from the kitchen. Are you sure you didn't see or hear anyone as you came along the hallway?
No, I don't think so. Just the radio blaring in here. I couldn't think who turned it on so loud. I wouldn't be able to hear anything else, would I?
That was clearly the murderer's idea. Or murderess.
How could I hear anything else?
You might have done. If the murderer left the hall that way, he may have heard you coming from the kitchen. He could have slipped up the back stairs or into the dining room.
I'm not sure. I heard a door creak and shut just as I came out of the kitchen.
Which door?
I don't know.
Think, Mrs. Ralston, try and think. Upstairs, downstairs, close at hand, right, left.
I don't know. I tell you, I'm not even sure I heard anything.
Can't you leave her alone? Can't you see she's all in?
We're investigating a murder, Mr. Ralston. Up until now, nobody's taken this seriously. Mrs. Boyle didn't. She held out on me with information. You all held out on me. Well, Mrs. Boyle is dead. And unless I get to the bottom of this, and quickly mind, there may be another death.
Another? Nonsense. Why?
Because there were 3 little blind mice.
A death for each of them? Well, there would have to be some sort of connection. I mean, another connection with the Longridge Farm business.
Yes, there would have to be that.
Why another death here?
Because the notebook we found only had 2 addresses in it. Now, at 24 Culver Street, there was only one possible victim. She's dead. But here at Monkswell Manor, there's a much wider field.
Oh, nonsense. It would be a most unlikely coincidence that there should be 2 people brought here by chance, both in the share of the Longridge Farm case.
Given certain circumstances, it might not be so much of a coincidence. Think it out in this case well. Now then, I want to get down quite clearly where everyone was at the time the murder was committed. I've already got Mr. Ralston's statement. You were in the kitchen preparing vegetables. You came out of the kitchen, into the passage, through the swing door, into the hall here. The radio was blaring, the lights were switched off, and the hall was dark. You flipped the lights on, saw Mrs. Boyle, and screamed.
Yes, I screamed, and at last people came.
Yes, as you say, people came. A lot of people from different directions, all arriving more or less at once. Now then, when I got out that window to trace the telephone wire, you, Mr. Ralston, went up to the bedroom you and Mrs. Ralston occupied to try the extension telephone. Where were you when Mrs. Ralston screamed?
I was still up in the bedroom. The extension telephone was dead too. I looked out of the window to see if I could see any sign of the wires being cut, but I couldn't. Just after I closed the window again, I heard Molly scream and I rushed down.
Those simple actions took you a rather long time, didn't they, Mr. Ralston?
I shouldn't think so.
I should say you definitely took your time over them.
I was thinking about something.
Very well. Now then, Mr. Wren, I'll have your account of where you were.
I'd been in the kitchen, seeing if there was anything I could do to help Mrs. Ralston. I adore cooking. After that, I went upstairs to my bedroom.
Why?
It's quite a natural thing to go to one's bedroom, don't you think? I mean, one does want to be alone sometimes.
You went to your bedroom because you wanted to be alone?
And I wanted to brush my hair and tidy up.
You wanted to brush your hair.
Anyway, that's where I was.
Did you hear Mrs. Ralston scream?
Yes.
And you came down?
Yes.
Curious that you and Mr. Ralston didn't meet on the stairs.
I came down by the back stairs. They're near to my room.
Did you go up to your room by the back stairs or through here?
I went up by the back stairs too.
I see. Mr. Pervicini?
I have already told you. I was playing the piano in the drawing room. Through there, Inspector.
I'm not an inspector, sir, just a sergeant. Did anyone hear you playing the piano?
I do not expect so. I was playing very, very softly, with one finger so.
You were playing 3 blind mice.
Is that so?
Yes. Such a catchy little tune, is it not? It's a, how shall I say, haunting little tune. Don't you all agree?
I think it's horrible.
And yet, it runs in people's heads. Someone was whistling it too.
Whistling it? Where?
I am not sure. Perhaps in the front hall, perhaps on the stairs, perhaps even upstairs in your bedroom.
Who was whistling 3 blind mice? Are you making this up, Mr. Pervicini?
No, Inspector. I beg your pardon, Sergeant. I would not do anything like that.
Well, go on. You're playing the piano.
One finger, so. And then I hear the radio playing very loudly. Someone was shouting on it. It offended my ears. And then, suddenly, I hear Mrs. Ralston scream.
Mr. Ralston upstairs, Mr. Wren upstairs, Mr. Purvagine in the drawing room, Miss Casewell.
I was writing letters in the library.
Could you hear what was going on in here?
No, I couldn't hear a thing until Mrs. Ralston screamed.
And what did you do then?
I came in here.
At once?
I think so.
You say you were writing a letter when you heard Mrs. Ralston scream?
Yes?
And you got up from the writing desk hurriedly and came in here?
Yes.
And yet there doesn't seem to be any unfinished letters at the writing desk in the library.
I brought it with me.
Dearest Jessie. Friend of yours or relation?
None of your damn business.
Perhaps not. You know, if I were to hear someone scream blue murder when I was writing a letter, I don't believe I would take the time to pick it up, fold it, and put it into my handbag before going to see what is the matter.
Oh, you wouldn't? How interesting.
Now then, Major Metcalf, what about you? You say you were in the cellar. Why?
Looking around. Just looking around. I went over to the cupboard underneath the stairs near the kitchen. Lots of junk and sports tackle, but I saw a door inside of it. I opened it up, and I saw a flight of stairs that went down. I got curious, so I followed. Nice cellars, by the way.
Glad you like them.
Crypt of an old monastery. Probably why it's called Monk's Fall.
We're not engaged in antiquarian research, Major Metcalf. We're involved in a murder. Now then, Mrs. Ralston states that she heard a door shut with a faint creak. That particular door shut with a creak. It could be, you know, that after killing Mrs. Boyle, the killer heard Mrs. Ralston coming from the kitchen and slipped into the cupboard, pulling the door to after him.
A lot of things it could be.
There would be fingerprints inside of the cupboard.
Mine are there, alright, but most criminals are careful to wear gloves, aren't they?
It's usual, but all criminals slip up sooner or later.
Now I wonder, Sergeant, if that is really true.
Look here, aren't we wasting time?
Please,
This is just...
Mr. Ralston, I'm in charge of this investigation.
All right,
Mr. Ralston! Thank you. Now then, we've got to establish opportunity, you know, as well as motive. Now let me tell you one thing. You all had opportunity. There are two staircases. Anyone could have gone up one and come down by the other. Anyone could have gone down to the cellar by the door near the kitchen and come up through a flight of steps through the trap door to the foot of the steps over there. The vital fact was that every one of you was alone at the time the murder was committed.
But look here, Sergeant. You speak as though we're all under suspicion. That's absurd.
In a murder case, everyone is under suspicion.
Nonsense. You know very well who killed that woman in Culver Street. You think it's the eldest of those 3 children at the Long Ridge farm. A mentally abnormal young man who is now 23 years of age. Well, damn it all, there's just one person here who fits the bill.
That's not true. That's not true. You're all against me. Everyone's always been against me. You're gonna frame me for a murder. It's persecution. That's what it is. It's persecution.
Hey, say that.
No, that's all right, Chris. Nobody's against you. Sergeant, try to tell him it's all right.
We don't frame people.
Tell him you're not going to arrest him.
I'm not going to arrest anybody. To do that, I've got to have evidence. I haven't got any evidence yet.
I think you're crazy, Molly. And you too, Sergeant. There's just one person here who fits the bill, and if Tony has a safety measure, he ought to be put under arrest. It's only fair for the rest of us.
Wait, Giles, wait. Sergeant Trotter, can I speak to you for a minute?
Oh, certainly, Mrs. Ralston. Will the rest of you go into the dining room, please?
I'm staying.
No, Giles, you too.
Molly, I don't know what's come over you. I'm staying.
Please.
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, what was it you wanted to say to me?
Sergeant Trotter, you think that this killer is the eldest of the 3 boys at the farm, but you don't know that, do you?
We don't actually know a thing. All we've got is that the woman who aided her husband in ill-treating and starving those children has been killed. and that the woman magistrate responsible for putting them there has also been killed. Telephone wire that links me to the police headquarters has been cut, and if...
You don't even know that. It might have just been the snow.
No, Mrs. Ralston. The line was deliberately cut. It was cut just out by the front door. I found the place.
I see.
Please, Mrs. Ralston, sit.
But all the same, you don't know.
I'm going by probability, Mrs. Ralston, and it all points in one direction. Mental instability, childlike mentality, desertion from the army, and then there's a psychiatrist report.
Oh, I know, and therefore it all seems to point to Christopher, but I don't believe it is Christopher. There must be other possibilities.
Such as...
Well, hadn't those children any relations at all?
The mother was a drunk. She died soon after the children were taken away from her.
What about their father?
He was an army sergeant serving abroad. If he's alive, he's probably been discharged from the army by now.
You don't know where he is now?
We haven't any information. To trace him may take some time, but I assure you, Mr. Ralston, the police take every eventuality into account.
But you don't even know where he is at this minute. And if the son is mentally unstable, then the father may have been mentally unstable too.
Well, it's a possibility.
If he came home after being a prisoner of war and having suffered terribly, if he came home and found his wife dead and his children had gone through some terrible experience, he might go off his head a bit and want revenge.
It's only surmise.
But it's possible.
Yes, Mrs. Ralston, it's quite possible.
So the murderer may be middle-aged or even old. When I said the police had rung up, Major Metcalf was frightfully upset. He really was. I saw his face.
Major Metcalf?
Middle-aged, a soldier. He seems quite nice and perfectly normal, but it might not show, might it?
No, often it doesn't show at all.
So, Christopher's not only the suspect, but it may be Major Metcalf as well.
Any other suggestions?
Well, Mr. Paravicini did drop the poker when I said the police had rung up.
Mr. Paravicini?
I know, he's old and foreign and everything, but he moves like a much younger man, and he's definitely got makeup on his face. Miss Casewell noticed it too. He might be... Well, this is very melodramatic, but he might be disguised.
You're very anxious, aren't you, that it shouldn't be young Mr. Wren?
He just seems so helpless somehow, and
Mrs.
so
Ralston,
unhelpful.
let me tell you something. I've had all possibilities in mind ever since the beginning. The boy, Georgie, the father, and someone else. There was a sister, you remember.
The sister?
It could have been a woman who killed Maureen Lyon. A woman, with the muffler pulled well up and the man's soft felt hat well down. And the killer spoke in a whisper. It's the voice that gives the sex away, you know.
Miss Casewell?
She is a bit old for the part. Oh yes, Miss Ralston, there's quite a wide field. There's yourself, for instance.
Me?
You're about the right age. No, Miss Ralston. Whatever you plan on telling me at the moment, I have no means of checking up on. And then there's your husband.
Giles? No, how ridiculous.
He and Mr. Wren are much of an age. Say your husband looks a bit older than his years, and Mr. Wren looks younger. Actual age is very hard to tell. How much do you know about your husband, Mr. Ralston?
How much do I know about Giles? No, don't be silly. No.
You've been married how long?
Just a year.
And you met where?
Well, at a dance in London. We went to a party.
Have you met his people?
He hasn't any people. They're all dead.
They're all dead?
Well, yes, but... No. You make it sound all wrong. His father was a barrister and his mother died when he was a baby.
You're only telling me what he told you.
Oh, yes,
But you don't know it of your own knowledge.
It's outrageous.
You'd be surprised, Mrs. Ralston, if you knew just how many cases like yours we get, especially since the war. Homes broken up and families dead. Fellow says he's been in the Air Force or just finished his army training. Parents killed, no relations. There aren't any backgrounds nowadays and young people settle their own affairs. They just meet and marry. It used to be that parents and relatives made the inquiries before they got engaged. That's all done away with. Girl just marries her man. Sometimes she doesn't find out for a year or two that he's an upstanding bank clerk or an army deserter or something equally undesirable. How long had you known Giles Ralston before you married him?
Just 3 weeks, but
And you don't know a thing about him.
that's not true. I know everything about him. I know exactly the kind of person he is. He's Giles. Oh, it's absolutely absurd that you suggest he's some horrible, crazy homicidal maniac. Why, he wasn't even in London when the murder took place.
Where was he? Here?
He went across country to find wire netting for our chickens.
Bring it back with him?
No, it turned out to be the wrong kind.
Only 30 miles from London, aren't you? Oh, you got an ABC. Only an hour by train, a little longer by car.
I tell you,
Just
Giles
a
wasn't in
minute,
London.
Mrs. Austin. This is your husband's coat.
Yes.
Evening news. Sold on the streets of London about 3:30 yesterday afternoon.
I don't believe it.
Don't you? Don't you?
Molly,
You startled me.
where is he? Where has he gone?
Who?
The sergeant.
Oh, he went that way.
If only I could get away somehow, some way. Is there anywhere I could hide? In the house?
Hide?
Yes, from him.
But why?
But darling, they're all so frightfully against me. They're gonna say I committed these murders. Particularly your husband.
Never mind him. Listen, Christopher. You can't go on running away from things all your life.
Why do you say that?
It's true, isn't it?
Oh yes, it's quite true.
You've got to grow up sometime, Chris.
I wish I hadn't.
Your name isn't really Christopher, is it?
No.
And you're not training to be an architect.
No.
Why did you?
Call myself Christopher Wren? It just amused me. And then they used to make fun of me at school. Call me Little Christopher Robin. Robin Wren. Association of ideas. It was helping at school.
What's your real name?
We needn't go into that. I ran away whilst I was doing my army service. Yes, I'm just like the unknown murderer. I told you I was the one the specification fitted. You see, my mother...
Yes, your mother.
Everything would be alright. If she hadn't died, she would have taken care of me. She would...
You can't go on being looked after all your life. Things happen to you, and you've got to bear them. You've got to go on just as usual.
One can't do that.
Yes, one can.
You mean, you have?
Yes.
What was it? Was it something very bad?
Something I've never forgotten.
Was it to do with Giles?
No, it was long before I met Giles.
You must have been pretty young. Almost a child.
Perhaps that's why it was so awful. It was horrible. I tried to put it out of my mind. I tried never to think about it.
So, you're running away too? Running away from things instead of facing them?
Yes. Well, perhaps, in a way, I am. Considering that we haven't seen each other since yesterday, we seem to know each other rather well.
Yes. It's odd, isn't it?
I don't know, I suppose it's a sort of sympathy between us.
Anyway, you think I ought to stick it out?
Well, frankly, what else can you do?
I can pinch the sergeant's skis. I can ski quite well.
That would be frightfully stupid. It'd almost be like admitting you're guilty.
Sergeant Trotter thinks I'm guilty.
No, he doesn't. At least I don't know what he thinks. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. Sergeant Trotter, he puts things in your mind, things that aren't true, that can't possibly be true.
What is all this?
I don't believe it. I won't believe it.
What can't you believe? Come on, out with it.
Will you see this?
Yes.
What is it? Yesterday's evening paper, a London paper, and it was in Giles's overcoat pocket, but Giles didn't go to London.
Well, if he was here all day.
But he wasn't. He went off in the car to look for wire netting for chickens, but he couldn't find any.
Well, perhaps he did go up to London after all.
Then why shouldn't he tell me he went up? Why pretend that he'd been driving all around the countryside?
Perhaps with the news of the murder?
He didn't know about the murder, did he?
Good Lord, Molly. Surely you don't... The sergeant doesn't think
I don't know what the sergeant thinks, but he can make you think things about people. You ask yourself questions and you begin to doubt. You feel as though somebody you know and love might be a stranger. That's what happens in a nightmare. You're somewhere in the middle of friends, and then you look at their faces and they're no longer your friends. They're just different people, just pretending. Perhaps you can't trust anybody. Perhaps everybody's a stranger.
I seem to be interrupting something.
No. We were just talking. I must go and get on with dinner and get on with the vegetables.
I'll come and give you a hand.
No, you won't.
Giles!
Tete on very healthy things at present. Keep out of the kitchen. Keep away from my wife.
But really, look,
You keep away from my wife, friend. She's not going to be the next victim.
So that's what you think about me.
Have I made it so clear, haven't I? There's a killer loose in this house, and it seems to me you fit the bill.
I'm not the only one to fit the bill.
I tell you, I'm worrying about my wife's safety.
So am I. I'm not going to leave you here with her.
What the hell?
Please go, Christopher. Please.
I'm not going.
Please go, Christopher. I mean it.
I shall be far away.
Molly, what's all this? You seem perfectly prepared to shut yourself up in the kitchen with a homicidal maniac.
But he isn't!
Oh, you've only got to look at him once to see he's balmy.
He isn't! He isn't dangerous, I tell you, Giles. I'd know if he was dangerous. Oh, anyway, I can look after myself.
That's what Mrs. Boyle said.
Giles, don't.
Look here. What is there between you and that wretched boy?
What do you mean by between us? I feel sorry for him, that's all.
Perhaps you've met him before? Perhaps you suggested for him to come here and that you both pretend to meet for the first time.
Giles, have you gone out of your mind? How dare you suggest these things?
All cooked up between you, was it? You didn't go to London yesterday, did you? Did you go to London to meet Christopher Wren?
Don't be a fool, of course I didn't.
Really? And what's this? What is it? It's your glove. You dropped it yesterday, and look what's inside it. A London bus ticket. I picked it up when I was talking to Sergeant Trotter.
All right. I went to...
So since you only didn't go to the village yesterday, you went to London as well.
All right.
First I was safely away, racing round the countryside.
First you were pacing round...
Go on now, admit it. You went to London.
All right! I went to London. So did you.
What?
Oh, so did you. You brought back an evening paper.
Where'd you get a hold of that?
It was in your overcoat pocket.
Anyone could have put it there.
Did they? No, you went up to London.
All right, so I did. I didn't go to meet a woman there.
Didn't you? Are you sure you didn't?
Hey, what do you mean?
Go away. Don't come near me.
What's the matter?
Don't touch me.
Did you go to London yesterday to meet Christopher Wren?
Don't be a fool. Of course I didn't.
Then why'd you go?
I shan't tell you that. Perhaps I already forgot why I went.
Molly, what's come over you all of a sudden? It's as if I don't even know you anymore.
Perhaps you never did know me. We've been married how long? A year? But you don't really know anything about me. What I thought or suffered or done or felt before I came here.
Molly, you're crazy.
All right then. I'm crazy. Perhaps it's fun to be crazy.
Molly, what the hell?
Now. I do hope you young people are not both saying a little more than you mean. What is so up to in these lovers' quarrels?
Lovers' quarrels, that's good.
Right, so I have been through all this myself when I was a younger man. Je ne sais, as the poet says. Not been married long, I imagine.
It's no business of yours, Mr. Pavicini.
No business at all. But I just came to tell you that the sergeant cannot find his skis, and I am afraid he is very annoyed.
Christopher.
What'd you say?
He wants to know if you have by any chance moved them, Mr. Ralston.
No, of course not.
Mr. Ralston, Mrs. Ralston, did either of you two remove my skis from the cupboard back from where we put them?
Certainly not.
Well, somebody's taken them.
What made you happen to look for them?
The snow's still lying. I need help here. Reinforcements. I was going to ski to the police station at Market-Hampton to report on the situation.
And now you can't. Dear me. Somebody seen to it that you certainly shan't do that. But there could be so many reasons, couldn't there?
Yes, what? What do you mean when you said Christopher just now?
Nothing.
So our young architect has hooked them, has he?
Is this true, Mrs. Ralston?
Oh, thank goodness. You haven't gone after all.
Did you take my skis, Mr. Wren?
Your skis, Sergeant? No. Why should I?
Well, Mrs. Ralston seemed to
Mr.
think that...
Wren is very fond of skiing. I thought he may have taken them to get a bit of exercise.
Exercise. Now listen, you people. This is a very serious matter. Somebody's taken my only chance of communication with the outside world. I want everyone here at once.
I think Miss Caswell has gone upstairs.
I'll get it.
I also left Major Metcalf in the dining room. Major Metcalf? He is not there now.
I'll go and find him.
Hello, what do you mean?
It's a question of my skis.
Mr. Ralston?
Did either of you two remove my skis from the cupboard back from where I put them with Miss Ralston?
Oh God, no. Why should I?
And I didn't touch him.
Nevertheless, they're gone. Which way did you go up to your room?
By the back stairs.
Then you passed the cupboard door.
Oh, if you say so, I have no idea where your skis are.
You were actually in that cupboard today.
Yes, I was.
At the time Mrs. Boyle was killed.
At the time Miss Boyle was killed, I'd been down in the cellars.
Were my skis in the cupboard when you passed through?
I haven't the least idea.
Didn't you see them there?
Can't remember.
You must remember my skis were there then.
No good shouting at me, young fellow. I wasn't thinking about any damn skis. I'm thinking about the cellars. Architecture of this place is very interesting, so I can't tell you whether your skis were there.
You realize that you yourself had an excellent opportunity of taking them.
Oh, sure, I'll grant you that. If I wanted to, that is.
Question is, where are they now?
We'll be able to find them if we all said to. It's not a case of hunt the thimble. Great whacking things, skis. We'll find them, supposing we all said.
Not quite so fast, Major Metcalf. That may be, you know, what we are meant to do.
I don't get you.
I am now in a position where I've got to establish myself inside a brain of a crazy, cunning killer. I've got to ask myself what he wants us to do and what he himself is planning to do next. I need to stay just one step ahead of him, because if I don't, there's going to be another death.
Oh, you still don't believe that, do you?
Yes, Miss Casewell, I do. 3 blind mice. 2 mice cancelled out. A 3rd mouse still to be dealt with. There's 6 of you here listening to me. 1 of you is a killer. 1 of you is a killer. I don't know which yet, but I shall. And another of you is the killer's prospective victim. That's the person I'm speaking to. Mrs. Boyle went out on me with information. Mrs. Boyle is dead. You, whoever you are holding out on me. Well, don't. Because you're in danger. And anybody who's killed twice isn't going to hesitate to kill a third time. And as it is, I don't know which of you it is who needs protection. Come on now. Anybody who has anything, however slight, to reproach themselves for in this bygone business had better come out with it. Well, you won't. I'll catch the killer, I've no doubt of that. But it may be too late for one of you. And let me tell you another thing. The killer's enjoying this. Yes, he's enjoying himself a great deal. All right, you can go.
Talking of chicken, really, have you ever tried chicken's liver served on toast that has been thickly smeared with foie gras, served with a very thin rasher of bacon, just touched with a soupçon of fresh mustard? I will come with you to the kitchen and we will see what we can concoct together. A charming occupation.
I'll be helping my wife, Mr. Pavicini.
Your husband is afraid for you. Quite natural under the circumstances. He doesn't fancy your being alone with me. It is my sadistic tendencies he fears, not my dishonorable ones. Alas, what an inconvenience the husband always is.
I'm sure Jarvis doesn't think.
He is very wise. Take no chances. Can I prove to you or to him or to our dogged sergeant that I am not a homicidal maniac? So difficult to prove a negative, and suppose that it said I am, in fact.
No, don't.
Ah, but such a gay little tune, is it not? She cuts off their tails with a carving knife. Snick, snick, snick. Delicious. Just what a child would adore. Cool little things, children. Some of them never grow up.
Stop frightening my wife at once.
It's silly of me, but you see, I'm the one who found her. Her face was all purple, and I can't forget it.
I know. It's difficult to forget sometimes. You are not really the forgetting type.
I'm sorry. There's pies, potatoes, and I was for dinner. Please, Jarvis.
What did you say to Lady to upset her, sir?
Me, Sergeant. Oh, just a little innocent fun. I have always been fond of a little joke.
There's nice fun, and there's fun that's not so nice.
Now, I do wonder what you mean by that, Sergeant.
I've been doing a little wondering about you, sir.
Indeed.
I've been wondering about this car of yours, and how it happened to overturn into a snowdrift. So conveniently.
Inconveniently, you mean. Don't you, Sergeant?
That rather depends on the way you're looking at it. Just where were you headed for when you had this accident?
I was on my way to see a friend.
In this neighborhood?
Not so very far from here.
What was the name and address of this friend?
Now, really, Sergeant Trotter, does that matter now? I mean, it has nothing to do with this predicament now, has it?
We always like the fullest information. Now, what did you say this friend's name was?
I didn't.
No, you didn't say. And it seems you're not going to say. That's very interesting.
But there might be so many reasons in a more discretion. These jealous husbands.
A bit old to be running around with the ladies at your time of life, aren't you?
My dear Sergeant, I am not perhaps quite so old as I look.
That's just what I was thinking, sir.
What?
That you may not be as old as you try to look. Plenty of people go about trying to look younger than they actually are. But when someone goes about trying to look older, well, it does make one ask oneself why.
Having asked questions of so many people, you begin to ask questions of yourself as well. Isn't that overdoing things?
Well, I might get an answer for myself. I don't get many from you.
Well, we'll try again. That is, if you have any more questions to ask.
One or two. Where were you coming from last night?
That is simple. From London.
What address in London?
I always stay at the Ritz Hotel.
Very nice too, I'm sure. What's your permanent address?
I dislike permanency.
What's your business or relation?
I play the markets.
Stockbroker?
Oh, you misunderstand me.
Enjoying this little game, aren't you? Sure of yourself too. But I shouldn't be too sure. You're involved in a murder case, and don't you forget it, Mr. Paravicini. Murder isn't just fun and games.
Not even this murder. Dear me, Sergeant Trotter, you're very serious. I have always thought policemen had no sense of humor. Is the Inquisition over for the moment?
Moment? Yes.
Thank you so very much. I will go look for your skis in the drawing room. Just in case someone has hidden them in the grand piano.
Just a moment, please.
Were you speaking to me?
Yes. Perhaps you'd come and sit down.
What do you want?
You may have heard some of the questions I was asking Mr. Paravicini.
I heard them.
I'd like to have a little information from you.
Well, what do you want to know?
Full name, please.
Leslie Margaret Catherine Casewell.
Catherine.
I spell it with a K.
Right, so, address?
Via Mariposa, Pindor, Mallorca.
That's in Italy.
It's an island. It's Spanish.
I see. And what's your address in England?
Karen Morgan's Bank, Leadenhall Street.
No other English address?
No.
How long have you been in England?
About a week.
And you've been staying since your arrival?
At the Ledsbury Hotel, Knightsbridge.
What brought you to Monkswell Manor, Miss Casewell?
I wanted to stay somewhere quiet in the country.
And how long do you, or have you supposed to remain here?
Until I finished what I came here to do.
And what was that? And what was that?
Huh?
What was it you came here to do?
I beg your pardon, I was thinking of something else.
You haven't answered my question.
I don't see, why I should... It's a matter that concerns me alone. It's a private affair.
All the same, Miss Casewell.
No, I don't think we'll argue about this.
Would you mind telling me your age?
Not in the least. It's on my passport. I'm 24.
24.
You were thinking I look older? It's quite true.
Is there anyone in this country who can vouch for you?
My bank will reassure you of my financial position. I can refer to you as solicitor, a very discreet man. I'm in no position of giving you a social reference. I've lived most of my life abroad.
Mallorca.
Mallorca and other places.
Were you born abroad?
No. Left England when I was 13.
No, Miss Casewell, I can't quite make you out.
Oh, does it matter?
I don't know.
Well, it seems to worry you.
It does worry me. You say you went to England when you were 13. Well, you left England, I'm sorry.
12, 13, thereabouts.
Was your name Casewell then?
It's my name now.
Well, what was your name then? Come on, tell me.
What are you trying to prove?
I want to know what your name was when you left England.
Oh, it was a long time ago. I've forgotten.
There are things one doesn't forget.
Possibly.
Unhappiness, despair.
I dare say
What's your real name?
I told you my name is Leslie Margaret Catherine Casewell.
Catherine? What the hell are you doing here?
Oh, God, I wish to God I'd never come here.
I always thought the police weren't allowed to give people a third degree.
I've merely been interrogating Miss Casewell.
You seem to have upset her. What did you do?
No, it's nothing. It's just all this murder. It's horrible. It came over me. I'll be heading to my room.
I can't believe it. It's impossible.
What can't you believe? 6 impossible things happening before breakfast like the Red Queen?
Yes, Mr. Wren, it's rather like that.
Dear me, you look as though you've seen a ghost.
I've seen something I ought to have seen before. Blind as a bat I've been, but now we may finally be able to get somewhere.
The police have a clue.
Yes, Mr. Wren. At last the police have a clue. I want everyone assembled in here again. Do you know where they are?
Jazz and Molly are in the kitchen. I have been helping Major Metcalf look for his skis. We've looked in the most entertaining places, but all to no avail. And I don't know where Paravicini is.
I'll go get him. You go get the others. Mr. Paravicini! Mr. Paravicini! Paravicini!
Yes, Sergeant. What can I do for you? The little policeman has lost his skis and does not know where they are. Leave him alone and they'll come home dragging a murder
sit, Major, Mrs. Ralston.
Must I come now? It's very inconvenient.
There are things more important than meals, Mrs. Ralston. Mrs. Boyle, for instance, won't want another meal.
That's a very tactless way of putting things.
I'm
Sergeant.
sorry, but I want cooperation, and I intend to get it. Mr. Ralston, will you go up and get Miss Casewell for me? I believe she went up to her room. Tell her it will only be a few minutes.
Have you found your skis yet, Sergeant?
No, Miss Ralston, but I may have a shrewd suspicion of who took them, and as to why they were taken. I won't say any more at the present moment.
Oh, please don't. I always think explanations should be kept to the very end. That exciting last chapter, you know.
This isn't a game, sir.
Isn't it? Now that's where I think you're wrong. It is a game. To somebody.
You think the murderer is enjoying himself? Maybe. Maybe.
What is happening?
Please sit, Miss Casewell, Mrs. Ralston. Now, you may all remember that after Mrs. Boyle was killed, I took statements from you all. Those statements related to your positions at the time the murder was committed. These statements were as follows. Mrs. Ralston in the kitchen, Mr. Pervicini playing the piano in the drawing room, Mr. Ralston upstairs in his bedroom, Mr. Wren, ditto, Miss Casewell in the library, and Major Metcalf in the cellar.
Correct.
Those were statements you made. They may be true, they may not. I had no means of checking up on them. 5 of those statements were true. 1 of them was false. Which one? 5 of you were telling me the truth. 1 of you was lying. I've got a plan to find out who the liar is. And once I find out who was lying to me, then I found out who the killer is.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Someone might have lied for some other reason.
I rather doubt that.
What's the meaning of that? You just said you had no means upon to which to verify these statements.
No, but suppose everyone was to go to these statements a second time.
Ah, that's old chestnut. Reconstruction of the crime.
That's a foreign idea.
Not a reconstruction of the crime, Mr. Pervicini. A reconstruction of the actions of seemingly innocent persons.
What do you expect to learn from that?
You will forgive me if I don't make that quite clear just at the moment.
It's a trap.
What do you mean it's a trap?
It's a trap.
I
know
only
it
want
is.
everyone to do as exactly as they did before.
But I don't see. I simply can't see. What you can possibly hope to find out by just making people do things they did before. I think it's just nonsense.
Do you, Mr. Wren?
Well, you can count me out. I'm too busy in the
I
kitchen.
can't count anybody out, Miss Ralston. One might almost believe you're all guilty by the looks of you. Why are you all so unwilling?
Whatever you say goes, eh, Sergeant? Or cooperate. Eh, Molly?
Very well.
Chris? Miss Casewell?
Yes.
Mr. Palpatini?
Oh, yes. I consent.
Major?
Yes.
And we're all to do exactly as we did before.
The same actions will be performed, yes.
Then I will return to the piano in the drawing room and I will pick out with one finger the signature tune of the murderer.
Not quite so fast, Mr. Pervicini. Mrs. Ralston, do you play the piano?
Yes, I do.
And you know the tune of Three Blind Mice?
So we all know it.
Then you could go up to the room and pick it out on the piano, just as Mr. Pervicini did? Good. Go up to the drawing room and be ready to play when I give the signal.
But Sergeant, I understood that we were each to repeat our former roles.
The same actions will be performed, but not necessarily by the same people.
Very well, Molly. Carry on. But still, honestly, I don't see the point.
There is a point. It is a means of checking up on each statement, and maybe one statement in particular. Now, will you all listen up? I'm going to assign you your new positions. Mr. Wren, will you please go into the kitchen? I believe you're very fond of cooking. Just keep an eye on Mr. Ralston's dinner for her. Major Metcalf, will you go up to Mr. Ralston's room and try the extension telephone? Miss Casewell, would you mind going down to the cellar? Mr. Wren will show you the way. Mr. Pervicini, can you go up to Mr. Wren's room? By the back stairs is the most convenient way. Unfortunately, I need someone to reproduce my own actions. I'm very sorry to ask it of you, Mr. Rustin, but will you go out that window and trace the telephone wire to the front door? Rather chilly job, but you're probably the toughest person here.
Hang on. What are you going to be doing?
I am going to be enacting the part of Mrs. Boyle.
Taking a bit of a risk, aren't you?
You will all go to your places and remain there until I call you.
Arlo Games.
No objection to my wearing my coat.
I should advise it, sir. Oh, and take my flashlight. It's behind the curtain. Oh, Mrs. Ralston! Mrs. Ralston!
Yes? What is it? You seemed very pleased with yourself. Have you got what you wanted?
I've got exactly what I want.
You know who the murderer is?
Yes, I do.
Which of them?
Oh, you ought to know, Mr. Ralston.
I?
Oh, you've been extraordinarily foolish, you know. You've been in trouble more than once by holding out on me. In fact, you've almost been killed.
I don't know what you mean.
Oh, come now, Mr. Ralston. We policemen aren't quite as dumb as you may think. I revealed all along that you had first-hand knowledge of the Longridge Farm affair. You knew Mrs. Boyle was a magistrate concerned. In fact, you knew all about it. Why didn't you speak up and say so?
I don't understand. I wanted to forget.
Your maiden name was Waring.
Yes.
Mrs. Waring, you taught school. In the school where those children went.
Yes.
It's true then, isn't it? That Jimmy, the boy who died, managed to get a letter posted to you? That letter begged for help. Help from his kind, young teacher. You never answered that letter.
I couldn't. I never got it.
You just didn't bother.
That's not true. I was ill. I went down with pneumonia that very day. It was put aside with the others. It was weeks afterwards that I found it with a lot of other letters, and by then that child was dead. Dead. Waiting for me to do something. Hoping. Gradually losing hope. It's haunted me ever since. If only I wasn't ill. If only I'd known. It's monstrous that such things should happen.
Yes. It's monstrous.
I thought the police didn't carry revolvers.
The police don't. I'm not a policeman, Mr. Ralston. You only thought I was a policeman because I called ahead from a call box, saying that I was from police headquarters and that a Sergeant Trott was on his way. I cut the telephone wire before I got to the front door. Do you know who I am, Mr. Ralston? I'm Georgie. I'm Jimmy's brother. Georgie. You better not scream, Mr. Ralston, because if you do, I shall fire this revolver. I'd like to talk to you a little. I said I'd like to talk to you a little. Jimmy died. That nasty, cruel woman killed him. They put her in prison. Prison wasn't bad enough for her. I said I'd kill her one day, and I did too. In the fog. It was all great fun. I hope Jimmy knows. I'll kill them all one day when I've grown up. That's what I said to myself, because grown-ups can do whatever they like. I'm going to kill you in a moment.
You better not. You'll never get away safely.
Someone's taken my skis. I can't find them. But it doesn't matter. I don't really care if I get away or not. I'm tired. It's all been such fun, watching you all pretending to be a policeman.
Revolver will make a lot of noise.
It will, rather. Much better to do it the usual way and take you by the neck. Last little mouse in the trap.
Georgie? Georgie? Do you remember me? Do you remember the farm?
The animals, the fat old pig, the day the bull chased us across the yard and the dogs.
Dogs?
Yes. Spot and Plain.
Kathy?
Yes, Kathy. You remember me now, don't you?
Kathy? It is you. What are you doing here?
I came to England looking for you. I didn't recognize you until you twirled your hair the way you always used to. You're coming with me.
Where are we going?
It's all right. I'm taking you somewhere where they'll look after you and see that you won't do any more harm.
Rawson! Rawson! Get out.
Molly, are you alright? What's wrong?
He's mad. He's quite mad.
Trotter, are you alright? Who would have dreamt it was Trotter?
It was my fault. I taught at the school. He thought I could save him, but
You should have told me.
I wanted to forget.
Everything's under control. We were cautious with what I said to Sisters looking after him. Poor fellow's man as a hatter. Fortunately, I had my suspicions of him from the beginning.
You did, but did you believe he was a policeman?
You see, Miss Rawson, I knew he wasn't a policeman. Because I'm a policeman.
You would...
Yes. We got a hold of that journal with Monkswell Manor written on it. We saw it vital to have someone on the spot. When put to it, Major Metcalf agreed to let me take his place. I can understand him, Trotter and that.
And Casewell is his sister.
Yes, it seems she recognized him just before this last bit of business. Fortunately, came to me about it. Help should be here pretty soon. We're starting to thaw. They're lucky too. Oh, and Miss Rawson, I'll take those skis off your hands. I hid them on top of the port poster.
And I thought it was Papa
Oh, yes. I gather they'll examine that car of his rather carefully. Probably find 1,000 or so switch watches in the spare wheel. Molly,
Giles. What were you doing in London yesterday?
I went to buy you a gift, my dear. We've been married just a year today.
Oh. That's why I went to London. I didn't want you to know.
No.
The cigars, I do hope they're all right.
Oh, they're splendid.
You'll smoke them.
Oh, I'll smoke them.
Well, what's my present?
Oh, I almost forgot. It's a hat.
A hat? But I practically never wear one.
Oh, it's only for best. The lady in the shop said it was the last thing in hats.